Working on a long line in Scentwork. When you need or want to give your dog more space to tackle bigger areas, or are worried about your dog leaving the search area and or interacting with other dogs or people or animals, using a long line is a great option. A long line is simply a long lead. For ease of handling, a 5 metre line works well for scent work. However, I usually work at 10 metres, which is about 30-foot lines, so that I can use them in a variety of different activities. When it comes to selecting your long line, you're spoiled for choice. They come in all sorts of weights and materials. Here are my 3 favourites. First is the Biothane. So this is the brand name of all coated webbing products made by Biothane Coated Webbing Corporation. It basically is a polyester webbing with a TPU, let's get technical here, thermoplastic polyurethane, and that replaces hard rubber, so it's a substitute. Or sometimes it's covered with PVC, and that just makes it more durable, waterproof and easy to clean. A quick dunk in a bucket and then wipe down with a cloth and you're ready to go. There's no waiting for it to dry, so it's great. And it's a bit like low maintenance leather, but it's not leather. So it doesn't soak up the mud or water or anything else that it might get dragged through. It feels great in your hands, smooth but not slippery. And you can get it in a variety of widths. I like this one, which is about 1.2 centimetres, half an inch wide, as that suits my small hands as well as my small dogs. However, it was still strong enough for my lab. This is the most expensive of the 3 long lines that I'm going to talk about, but for good reason. It's also the heaviest, though it is lighter than leather, so it's well worth the money. Rope. So, what you want to do with rope is make sure you choose a soft rope. You want to avoid anything rough or scratchy that could damage your hands. Even so, if it gets wet, I do recommend wearing gloves. This is a mid-weight, so it's suitable for all breeds, and it's one that I've used with so many clients' dogs over the years. It does get a little heavier when wet, but not enough to make it unusable. And when it gets really mucky, I just chuck it in the washing machine. But I put it on a slow spin, just in case the trigger hook smashes into the door. You could also put it in a laundry bag before you put it in. The biggest downside to it is that it does take a while to dry. And the third one is the webbing line. So this is the cheapest option of the 3. It's very lightweight, which is great for small dogs. But because it's so lightweight, it can get caught in the wind on blustery days, and that makes it a little less pleasant for the dog because she can feel some pressure on a harness as the wind snatches at the line. It gets very soggy when wet, but not much heavier. What I do is I tie knots in it at different lengths, and that helps to stop my hand from slipping off even when I'm wearing gloves. And it's another line that goes in the washing machine, but compared to the rope, it dries fairly quickly. If you don't use a long line very often or have a light or small dog, this is a great, good, cost-effective option. I've also used this line with dogs who might chomp on it, as it's cheap to replace if they do damage it. When we're looking at the storage of lines, it's one of those things that can be so frustrating. Obviously there's lots of ways to store it. My preference is to gather it into loops in my hand. So as you can see here, I just feed it through from one hand to the other, gathering it in a decent sized loop. And then when I get to the end, I'm just going to wrap the end of the line around. That keeps all the loops together. And then I'll feed the clasp right through the hole. And that means that I can hang it and store it. So it's a really good way to keep up for unravelling. Easy to hang on the dog cage or storage rack. And importantly, it keeps the clasp easily accessible to attach to the harness without having to unravel the whole line. Just make sure that when you start looping it into your hand that you're holding the handle or the end of the line rather than the end with the clasp. Inevitably, the line will get tangled. So to reduce this, some folks prefer to store their line in a series of quick release running knots. So this particular technique allows you to pull on one end of the line and the whole thing unravels tangle free. So to achieve this, what you want to do is just make a loop in the end, and then you're going to feed the line through the loop. And then you're going to repeat that. Feed it through the loop, feed it through the loop. So if you put your hand through and grasp the line, I'll slow it down here. Hand goes through, grasps the line, and pulls it through. So just making a chain. And then you just pull at both ends and it unravels. So it's a really good way to store it. It makes it a little bit bulkier, but it means that you don't have to untangle it when you're going to use it. I think it's a good option. I don't use it for all of my lines, but if I want something that I can really access really easily, this is a really good way to do it. I'd say that the two most common uses for a long line are to help teach recall and for tracking. Both of these activities use the line in a completely different way. So for recall, the line can be loose, trailing along the ground, giving the dog a sense of freedom of being off lead. Or it can be used just with a slight tension, just to help prevent the dog or handler being injured if the line suddenly goes tight. You don't want the dog having a lot of loose line to take up and then lunging at the end of it, and you know, it is a really quick way to get pulled over. But if you look in the top picture, you'll see that this dog, this is Fen. Fen is out there sniffing around as if he's off lead, and the line is just trailing behind. The line also trails in tracking, but it's actually trailing behind the handler. So if you look at the bottom picture, the handler's holding the line up, but it's trailing behind her with her left hand. She doesn't need to be carrying the whole line all the time. The handler holds the line, maintaining light contact with the dog through that, but it's not tight. There's a steady contact so that the dog knows the handler is right there behind her. Now, Scentwork also requires specific long line handling. As I mentioned previously, the lead, or in this case the line, shouldn't be tight. It's only there to stop your dog from leaving the search area. It's not there so you can manoeuvre or otherwise influence her movements. But you cannot leave it to drag along behind the dog. Unless you're searching a field or a room with nothing in it, like chairs or tables or boxes, leaving the line to drag will result in it getting caught up with whatever's in the search area. Now, this can cause the line to tighten unexpectedly and be very off-putting, or at the least distracting for your dog. And you'll end up spending more time untangling the line than you will concentrating on your dog. If you are searching movable items, they can get scooped up on the line. So as you can see here, this is my dog Cherry, and I'm leaving the line on the ground. So she can just wander around, go wherever she wants. So as she searches around, you can already see the line is getting tangled. So I can move to try and reduce that, but I'm standing behind her and I'm sending her forward to search, which she finds very disconcerting. It's not what she's used to. It's not the way we normally work. So the line is there to stop her leaving the area. So it just got a little bit tight there, and then she came back in. So that is what it's there for. But you can see she's not particularly happy because she's got this tension on the line. She keeps looking up at me like, what is happening? And all the boxes are just getting gathered behind her. I mean, it's just a really inefficient way to work. It's not fun for her, and it's not fun for me. It's certainly not conducive to scent working. So let's compare that to when you are keeping the line off the ground. So I'm holding the bulk of the line in my hand in the loops, and my non-guiding hand. So that's the left hand if you guide with your right, or the right hand if you guide with your left. So when required, you can use your guiding hand to shorten or lengthen the line. You're holding the line up so that it's above the objects on the floor, but you're keeping it loose so that the dog can move in any direction she likes. So whether walking a small dog like Ella here, or a taller dog like Cherry the Lab, you just adjust the height you hold the line according to both the size of the dog and what objects are in the area. So I still ask the question, and she's like, yeah, it's in this one. Perfect. So she was able to work with me still supporting her by moving around the area, moving in front of her, keeping the line up. The line was of no concern to her. It's almost like she didn't even know it was on because it didn't impede her in any way. And so that's the ideal way to work when you're doing some scent work with your dog on the long line. She was just struggling to get the little toy out of that. I think it was a coffee capsule box at the end there. But you could see that she was able to move very easily around the area. Just as you would when working off lead or on a standard length lead, you want to stay in front of your dog. So you're going to follow your search plan using the usual search patterns. Working on the line doesn't change any of those routines or positions and shouldn't change anything for the dog. But it does give you a little bit of additional work. You know, as with any new skill, practice using the line and it'll become easier and less of a hindrance. Now you can see Cherry here, she's a little bit hesitant. This was filmed just after I'd filmed the one where she was gathering all the boxes behind her, and she didn't find that fun. So she's a little bit unsure about how to work. But I'm just moving in front of her. I'm keeping the line up, but there's no tension on it. And I'm just moving her around. This is just a very steady, quiet, free search. So now I'm going to start to move and I'm going to start to do some patterns. So I'm going to head to that corner and I wait for her because she can check that on the way. That's absolutely fine. And then we just work as we would if she was off lead. I give her access to the air under the box and then I get ready to move across the diagonal. The line is loose. I'm not hurrying her in any way. And then when she gets there, we check under that one. And I'm going to move back to the corner number 3. Again, line is loose. I gather it up so it doesn't get too loose as she moves closer to me. And we check corner number 3. So the patterns stay the same. I'm just working exactly as I would if the dog was off lead. Now you can still use the hand holding the line to support her with the harness when she jumps onto and off objects. The line shouldn't prevent that. So you're not losing that support and that safety. Here's another example of how not to do it. So this is with Ella, and this time I filmed the one of how to do it first because I made that mistake with Cherry. But I've sent her in and she's looking at me like, why are you standing over there? So again, they're puzzled that I'm not in front of her. She moves a little bit faster than Cherry and she's smaller, and so the line is getting more tangled much faster. I'm just kind of standing around. I'm moving a little bit just to keep her going, but you can see like she's getting tangled in her legs there. It's already starting to look like carnage in that search area. Look at that. I mean, she's like, what is this? So everything's getting dragged into the middle of the search area, into a real tangle. I'm so busy trying to work out the tangle. Look, it's right under her back legs. I'm so busy trying to work this out that we're actually not really doing any quality scent work at all. So if you're at the point where your dog's getting tangled up in the line, all the boxes and things are moving, just give up. If you are lucky enough to have a trusted helper, they can hold the line for you. So here the helper could be off to the left while the handler is off to the right. What this does is it allows you to work the dog as if she was off lead, but without the worry of her leaving the search area or without the encumbrance of handling the line yourself. So in this situation, the dog would work with the handler just as if she was off lead. So the handler would work the dog as she would normally, but safe in the knowledge that the helper is holding the line. The helper is keeping out of everyone's way, and that's why she's off to the left. But it's a really useful way to work with clients who are just starting out in scent work, for example, and it's really hard to remember everything, never mind handling a long line at the same time. It's also really good to give students confidence, and in the case of dogs who might have mild risk issues, it gives me, the trainer, the confidence that I can keep everyone else in the workshop safe while this pair are working. So it's a really useful thing if you have a good helper. Many times I've had handlers, quite often first-time scent workers, be reticent about letting their dogs work off lead. So it's understandable. Things that they worry about are they're frightened that their dog will run to the other dogs in the class or in the workshop or even just other dogs in the area. So they're worried about that. They're worried about the dog running to people. So it might be that their dog is super friendly, super sociable. It might be that their dog is actually quite anxious about people, so runs and tries to get them out of their area. They're also worried about their dog running away, so lack of a recall, or we're worried about distractions. And not paying attention. They seem to think that if the dog is online, they will pay more attention to them, and that, I'm afraid that's not an automatic thing that will happen. And also, they think that the dog might not engage with them. If the dog has got other things to do, then they always assume the dog will take those other options. But dogs astound their handlers all the time. I would never force a handler to work their dog off lead. And in most cases, I've been privileged enough to have the trust of the handler that nothing bad will happen if they let the dog off lead. They've trusted me. Occasionally we compromise, and I've put the dog in a long line, which I've controlled, allowing the handler to work as if the dog was off lead, but with a literal safety line. In all cases, I can't believe I'm saying this, but in all cases the dogs astounded their handlers, and in most the handlers were confident enough to walk their dogs off lead, if not by the end of that session, but in future sessions that we work together. So it's one of these things that sometimes the fear is worse than the reality, but the long line is that bridge that can just help them get over that reticence. Practice your handling skills with and without your dog. So get used to handling the line. So you're going to gather it in, you want to let it back out. Gather it in, let it out. You hold it up as you go through the search patterns, and just be brave. Whenever you can, work your dog off lead.